everyone, to the R.E.S.T podcast, where our goal is to help each and every one of you displace confusion, chaos, and dis-ease in order to heal and find significance in life. I am your host, Natalie Williams, and I am here with the author of the Reconstitution Method for Healing and Rest, Virginia Dixon. Hi, Virginia.
Hi, Natalie.
So we just wrapped up a very heavy, difficult episode and conversation. Everyone who listened to the last episode will know. But I really think that, and you mentioned it at the very end of the episode, you being a mother is what really gave you that strength to just fight through everything that was going on and to persevere. And we already know your spiritual gift is long-suffering as well.
It's Morgan. Can I just talk to her for a sec? I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Here, pick up because she'll...
So, Virginia, people just heard a phone call and the sound just kind of cut out, and it's because we had to take a moment, and it was a prime mom moment. You answered the phone call for your daughter who needs your help, and you said, no, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to be there. And I think it was just so perfect to include in this episode. I mean, we're not going to include the conversation, of course, but it's a prime mom moment, you know?
You know, I think when we're little girls, we have this dream about falling in love and getting married. And well, I had a dream, and I was certainly mentored and discipled to grow up, work hard, study, go to college, have a career or an education for sure, fall in love, get married, get a house, have babies. And it all sounded so good and so easy and so accessible. And it's all beautiful, but it's messy.
Yeah.
And I think of being a mom, and we're celebrating Mother's Day in May, right? I think about being a mom, and nobody told me that it was a destination. Nobody told me that I would be growing up with my kids. Yeah. And as you know, I didn't have a mother. I had a mother, but I didn't really have a mom per se, in the sense that my mom left us when we were young, shortly after we immigrated to the United States. So for many years, I was alone with Dad during many important formative years. And of course, he remarried, and I have an amazing mom, Marlene, who was wonderful. But by then, I was already in junior high school and high school, and, you know, so much of those formative years were with Dad.
Right.
So my kids have had to put up with so much from me growing up. I think all kids do, right? Because our moms are growing up with us, and they don't know. Nobody tells them. Hopefully we were shown, but nobody really tells us how to be a mom. And those of you who are listening and think, I just blew it as a mom, and I didn't have much of a mom, I just want to encourage you to look at it all through the eyes of goodness and the eyes of providence, God's care. Because it is a beautiful thing to receive God's grace, His unmerited favor, and extend mercy to ourselves and to others. Because moms are really special people. They're very unique. And yes, I will drop everything always. My kids made so many sacrifices and are such a huge part of what formed R.E.S.T and what shaped R.E.S.T. and of the pilgrimage of my personal and my professional life. And they're first, they're number one. If I was sitting here with President of the United States, I'd say, excuse me, I'm expecting a call from my daughter, and if the call comes in, I have to take that call. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
You always do. You always do. Even if you're in the middle of a session with something, you're like, I'm sorry, this is my daughter. I have to take this
call. Yeah. Do you know I've had several patients and clients thank me?
Yeah. They admire you for it.
And I know there's several that have been frustrated, and I don't blame them. And that's okay. They get to be frustrated. Yeah. And I have to work with integrity. And that's what the rest of my life will entail. My husband and my kids and my team, all, of course, after God. And, you know, I spend a lot of time with the Lord in the mornings.
Oh, yeah.
And spend quiet time.
Like at 3, 4 in the morning.
4 in the morning. Yeah. I'm an early riser.
You are.
I found a peace, Natalie. We finished a tough segment, like you said, but it was my deepest conviction as a mom, and all the things my kids tried to tell me and explain to me about the season they were growing up in, that frankly, I didn't have the capacity to process and absorb the intensity of the world they were growing up in and the things, the decisions, the choices they needed to navigate. I was frankly naive. Loved my husband, lived in a nice neighborhood, went to church. It was the if-then kind of mentality. If you do all these right things, then, right?
Right, yeah.
Not. And it blindsided me. And I think one of the things that blindsided me is I had a high view of man and a low view of God. And I didn't realize it until after they all left home. And I dove deep into finishing what I started, which was my pilgrimage through R.E.S.T.
Right.
And then I realized I didn't have a just, accurate, or a lawful, a truthful view of God. And with that came a lot of tears and a lot of brokenness, but deep conviction that I would spend the rest of my life continuing to grow.
Yeah.
And pluck some of the weeds that grew in our relationship with my kids and in my marriage as a result of having a wrong view of God. That's why I began last session with that.
Right. And with the thing that you're going to read, you said that it was over 30 years ago that you heard this. I think it's a divine moment that you remembered this for this episode.
Is that strange? When God created mothers, when the good God was creating mothers, he was in his 6th day of overtime when the angel appeared and said, "You're doing a lot of fiddling around on this one." And God said, "Have you read the specs on this order? She has to be completely washable, but not plastic. Have 180 movable parts, all replaceable. Run on black coffee and leftovers. Have a lap that disappears when she stands up. A kiss that can cure anything from a broken leg to disappointed love affair. And 6 pairs of hands." The angel shook her head slowly and said, 6 pairs of hands? No way. "It's not the hands that are causing me the problem," God remarked. "It's the 3 pairs of eyes that mothers have to have." "Is that on the standard model?" asked the angel. And God nodded. "1 pair that sees through closed doors when she asks, 'What are you kids doing in there?' when she already knows. Another right here in the back of her head that sees what she shouldn't, but what she has to know. And of course, the ones in front of her head that can look at a child when he's goofed up and say, 'I understand, I love you,' without so much as uttering a single word." "God," said the angel, touching his sleeve gently, "get some rest, perhaps tomorrow." "I can't," said God. "I'm so close to creating something so close to myself. Already, I have one who heals herself when she's sick, can feed a family of 6 on a pound of hamburger, and can get a 9-year-old to stand under the shower." The angel circled the model of a mother very slowly. "It's too soft," she sighed. "Yes, but tough," said God excitedly. "You can imagine what this mother can do and endure. Can it think? Not only can it think, but it can reason and compromise," said the Creator. Finally, the angel bent over, ran her fingers across the cheek. "There's a leak," she pronounced. "I told you that you were trying to put too much into this one model." "It's not a leak," said the Lord. "It's a tear." "What's it for?" "Oh, it's for joy, sadness, disappointment, pain, loneliness, and pride." "You're a genius," said the angel. Somberly, God said, I didn't put it there. It was written by Irma Bombeck, When God Created Mothers.
I love it. I love that.
How special is that? When I held on to Riley, I held on to every person that ever came to me for advice. Mm-hmm. But to be frank with you, I hung on to every single one of my kids, even the one I lost.
Yeah.
At 4 months, because I felt like I missed so many things that were right in front of me. And I had no understanding of the spiritual things that oppose us. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I got to get this right because this is somebody else's daughter.
Yeah.
And Brandy, Riley's mom, lost a child, 16 years old, McCall. Precious, precious boy. I've gotten to know him through pictures, through stories, through little clips. And I just wanted to do that to honor his life. And I just didn't want them to lose another one.
Yeah.
And numerous times Riley said, you saved my life. Mm-hmm. I know I didn't. I feel that our Creator God that made us very unique gave me the wisdom and the capacity, the strength and the courage to hold on to her as if I was holding on to every single one of our children. Yours too, Natalie.
Yeah.
Those to come. And I've said for years, in my estimation, women represent the most important demographic in the history of this country. Because they shape the character and conscience of the next generation. And there's been so much erosion to the constitution of the family. And I'm certainly a consequence of that as well. That I don't think we understand how much power a woman has. And I often say, find me one proverb warning a woman about a man.
You won't find one.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I can show you many, many, many proverbs warning a man about a woman.
Yeah.
It isn't because she's awful. It's because she's powerful.
Yeah.
And I believe that's why Lucifer, Satan, the accuser, right? The deceiver, went to her.
Yeah.
She had the power. And the man has an enormous amount of authority. The balance of those things in a home are so important. We're going to talk about those the rest of the month. But
And we've talked about it before in one of our very first series. In talking
Did we?
about, lawful authority in the home that built me.
I forgot.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful month to invite women to rise up and understand the power and the beauty and the value and everything that is sacred about their very constitution.
Yeah.
Even our anatomy is built to be what? To bring comfort.
And
to
nurture.
be soft, nurture, feed, sustain life. And a life is so intricately woven into our very anatomy that there's something divine that I still can't fully grasp in what that looks like.
It's the connection between a mother and their child. That's the divine connection. That's the interwoven.
Something about our connection with God, isn't it? The life force.
I think it is a prime example of that connection with God, because he describes us as his children.
My neighbor had somewhat of a breakdown and he left his family. And I'll never forget, Jordy ran across the street pleading with me that we needed to help them. We needed to do everything we could with them to help what was happening. Can we call Dad? And Mom, can you come over? And, we settled down a little bit and got the whole story. I always fixed everything with a cup of tea. And I said, let's have a cup of tea. Let's talk about this. Let's pray about this. And I'll call Dad right away. And I'll never forget her sipping her tea and looking at me and saying, if Dad left us, I'd be terrified. Who would protect us? But Mommy, if you left me, who would take care of me?
That distinction.
The distinction out of the mouth of babes.
Yeah.
Intuitively. children understand the value of both mom and dad and their need for each of them independently, depending on each other.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a self-evident truth that she had observed.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful thing. But as we finished this last series on addictions being a banquet in the grave, it's almost like there is sand sipping through our fingers and we're losing the heart and the soul of a generation, and we're seeing the disintegration. And if it's not hitting our home, it's hitting the home of people we love or of relatives. And it's become epidemic. And I don't want us to give in to the times. We have power. We have an enormous amount of power and authority if we're able to step into these places of rest.
And I want to briefly say that's not a feminist movement or a feminist type of statement that Virginia is making right now.
It's a human being statement.
And it's based off of our God-given purpose.
That's right.
That's what I really want to stress with this, because with today's society, there's so much push for this feminist movement. And of course, supporting women is great. Seeing them as equals is great, but you have to recognize the God-given purpose. You can't ignore that.
Anatomy speaks for itself.
Absolutely.
Right. And by the way, I was going to ask you, I didn't ask you yet, but I want to do a segment on language.
Yeah.
Because so many words have been hijacked to an unproductive end, and it's destructive, and it's eroding the very foundations of truth.
Yeah.
Churchill said, truth is so important that it's often protected by a bodyguard of lies.
Yeah.
And we have to have the conviction to speak about things that are self-evident. My husband has been a great husband to me and a partner and a friend. Is he perfect? No. Has everything during the course of our marriage been perfect? No. But we've been married almost 40 years. And as I look back, I realize that it's the enduring voices of a generation. I say this all the time, that speak to the triumph of the human spirit. But the triumph of us as women and mothers is to step into these positions of power and understand what that means. And we invite people into a place of rest, relational, emotional, and spiritual truth, where they can reconcile the confusion between the spirit, the soul, and the body, and come into alignment into that creative order, that life force that I think is a very personal and intimate God that said, here, go, run, govern, be free.
Yeah.
And he did the same for a man.
He did.
And the role of a man is to really honor and cherish and respect. Do we each live out our roles perfectly? Of course not.
No.
But if a woman can stand in the gap and use her power and authority to develop and grow in wisdom, take the knowledge that you have in your body, discipline your soul, your mind, your heart, your will, your conscience, to come into alignment with the story that your bodies carry. And if you can look up knowing that God will direct your path, amazing things happen.
Yeah.
Because really, I think we're going to be instrumental in holding the line and healing the hemorrhaging hearts of our marriages, our children, our relationships, our communities, our spheres of influence, our state, and our nation. I think that is the power of a woman. I have yet to see or hear a message that's more powerful than the role of a woman in time. It is one of power. And I think in the discussions we're going to have the rest of the month, I'm really looking forward to breaking that down.
I think an excellent example of our role in the nation and it moving forward is we are the thermometer in the family, right? A lot of times we hear this saying of happy wife, happy life. And I mean, it's another example, even though it's a turn of phrase, it's an example of the power that the woman has in the home. And I love what you said about bringing ourselves into alignment, because that also means regulating ourselves, increasing our self-awareness to know and to recognize the role that we play, especially in our men as the leaders of the home. And again, we've talked about this in The Home That Built Me in that series. And how the men have authority and women have power.
3 things I want to encourage everyone, and it's in module 1, right?
Yes.
Of our 6 weeks course that I think it's accessible to everyone now. But if we can at least pause wherever we find ourselves and think about, wait a minute, I'm a spirit working through a soul in a body. God says he's a spirit. The Holy Spirit works in the soul, the mind, the heart, the will, the conscience of a person. Mm-hmm. And then Jesus was the incarnation of that. There's a triune being. We're created, spirit, soul, body, in the context of that triune constitution.
Yeah.
And we're given an identity. Out of all those trillions, gazillions of sperms that go after that one egg, only one makes it.
Yeah.
And it is not random. If there's anything I've proven to you and to every single patient that walks through my door, is that nothing is random under the sun. And I have a lot of tools to make a case for that. Perhaps one day we can talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But that conception is not random. So that's 1/3 of our identity. Then we have mom and dad, their story. And so our stories didn't begin at home, right? Mm-hmm. It began with what was going on in their own stories, even 1 year prior to conception.
Yeah.
Because it impacts the constitution of the DNA in 12-month cycles, right? That's altered.
Yeah.
And then you have the story of our ancestors. Mm-hmm. So that has to do with identity. Right. But if we can grasp the power of the image and the authority that an image has, and the value of understanding identity, that we get it from the design, our mom and dad, and our ancestors. Mm-hmm. And then we can step into 3 areas of purpose. Mm-hmm. How we love, understanding the hungers that compel us, and then recall and heal. If we have the courage to work on those 3 things, the power of a woman in a marriage, in a home, in a business, in an institution is transformative beyond anything we ever dreamt of. And I believe we can heal the hemorrhaging heart in 1 generation.
1,000%. Yeah.
We see what it does in our spheres of influence, Natalie.
We do. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And I mean, you're coming at this from a perspective of being a mom, right? And I'm coming at it from a perspective of being a daughter and not yet a mom. And it's heartbreaking to see where our nation is right now, where my generation is right now, and specifically what is happening in our Senate with these bills that we're seeing passed. And I know that this is going in a more political direction than what we really meant.
Well, it's a sphere of influence. Yeah,
it is. Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. And you should mourn. And this is tragic. This is a time to mourn. And I am thankful that the face of evil is being exposed, because I don't know anybody with a pulse that can see a baby coming out of the womb with the umbilical cord attached and pass a bill that the mother has 3 days to decide if that is a viable life or not.
15 days. 15
Is
days.
It 15 days?
15 days.
It's not acceptable. I was mortified. I too wept.
Yeah.
And as you know, I spend hours spending quiet time. And what a beautiful opportunity to rise up. Evil is overplaying its hand.
It is.
And it violates the conscience of 99.9% of the people that I've spoken to.
Yeah.
And so what does that tell us? It's time to step in, because that life cannot be taken without the consent of a woman.
Yeah.
And we have an amazing opportunity before us. And you know, it is to this end that I labor.
Yeah.
For you and my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah.
I want to know that we've left the promise of rest very well explained.
Yeah.
And the invitation of rest accessible to everyone. And I do want to speak to the women who sent their babies back to God before them. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Those babies live. Yeah. Just because they're not with you doesn't mean you terminated their life. The probability of that child having been born and having the identity and the image that they had is not at your disposal. Mm-hmm. You did everything you could with what you had.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to step into that place of rest and live from that place of rest and know that your baby is alive and one day you will meet it. If you haven't named him, I want to encourage you to name it. Because if I could tell story after story after story of the encounters I've had with women who thought they didn't care mm-hmm. and were able to heal that part of their life, of their history, it was amazing. So we're all moms, right? And we all have the anatomy and the constitution and the makeup to exercise an enormous amount of power and time. And I think this podcast, this first little brief podcast, is about inspiring us.
Yeah.
Instructing and equipping and motivating every single one of us to persevere and to say that I believe we need to hold the line here and say no more.
Yeah.
Dr. Dobson and Gary Bauer wrote a book, Children at Risk, many, many, many years ago. And I'll never forget, before I met either of them, I wrote on the margins of my book, I will lick envelopes for the likes of these men. Little did I know I would end up doing what I'm doing and what I've done with them and around them and in the same spheres of influence. Mm-hmm. Little did I know. But they wrote these words. This nation has never known, the world has never known, the joint efforts and the joint commitment of women saying no more. Mm. This is a step too far. And I think we're seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for your convictions.
Thank you.
And I'm thankful that you've chosen to make a lot of sacrifices to come alongside R.E.S.T. and work with me. So yeah. I love you and I thank you.
I love you too. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm thankful for you because, oh gosh, I would not be where I am right now without you. It's been a gift and a pleasure and an honor. Mm-hmm. And I am so excited to see all of the other lives that we at R.E.S.T. are going to continue to touch and influence and help grow and help heal. And I know that we're only beginning.
Yeah. I cried the other day. I was having quiet time with God, and I just said to him, I know I'm not going to live to see the fruit of this because you have something big ahead of me. But it moved me to tears, and I was humbled with gratitude for the privilege of laying a foundation with you all. And I know you're going to continue to work with honor and integrity and carry on.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to head out to Pasadena.
To be with your daughter.
To be with my daughter.
Yep. As you should.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So for updates about R.E.S.T. and this podcast, please visit our Instagram or Facebook, The Place of R.E.S.T. If you'd like more information about Virginia or to support and join the cause of R.E.S.T., please go to virginiadixon.com/collaborate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to R.E.S.T. with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.